A bead of water trembled between the two steel pins of my meter. I pressed them deeper into the painted block wall of Bay 3 and watched the display climb. 23, 26, 28.6. Behind me, the refrigeration unit finished its groaning cycle and fell silent. Wade Kessler took the inspection sheet off my clipboard. "Your moisture reading is nonsense." He laughed as he said it, not warmly, loud enough for the refrigeration crew, 2 co-op members, and Claire Dugan, the buyer, to hear. Then he drew a red line through my finding, wrote rejected beside it, and handed the sheet back to me. I photographed the meter, wrote 1042, 28.6 on a square of blue painter's tape, and stuck it beside the pinholes. I left the tested spot untouched. Claire opened the hard case at her feet. Wade said, "You don't need to humor her." I brought the meter this far. Claire crouched at the wall. Her instrument had a current calibration sticker from a lab in Milwaukee. She fitted her pins into my holes and waited. 28.4. When she looked up, Wade wasn't looking at the number. He was looking at my mother. Ruth Bell stood near the cooler door with both hands wrapped around a paper cup she had stopped drinking from. She glanced at me for less than a second, then studied the concrete floor. I had expected Wade to be angry if I found something. I had not expected my mother to look ashamed before I even understood what he was hiding. Wade recovered first. He always did. "These old blocks are full of mineral salts," he said. "They'll throw off any resistance meter you stick into them." Claire stayed crouched. "Both meters?" "They're the same type." "They aren't." Claire spoke quietly, which made Wade lower his own voice to meet hers. She was in her 40s with silver beginning at one temple and a navy coat that looked too clean for a dairy loading bay. She had spent the first hour of the inspection asking the kind of questions people asked when they had already read every document in the room. How often did the West compressor short cycle? Why were 3 pallet rows spaced 6 inches farther from the wall than the others? Who had changed the defrost schedule in March? Wade had answered each one. He knew the facility down to the amperage of the old dock heaters. That was what made his reaction to my reading feel wrong. An incompetent man might dismiss a damp wall because he didn't understand it. Wade understood what wet insulation could do inside a refrigerated envelope. He also understood what a delayed sale could do to him. Lou Alvarez, the refrigeration technician, cleared his throat. "Could be surface condensation." Wade seized it. "Exactly." Lou scratched the gray in his beard. "I said could be." "Bay 3 just came off defrost," Wade said. "The wall's cold. We've got 6 people breathing in here. Nora sees a number and turns it into a catastrophe." "I called it active moisture," I said. "That's a condition, not a catastrophe." "You don't know whether it's active." "The wall was 9% when we entered." Claire looked at me. "You tested it earlier?" "Baseline reading, 9.2 at 9:55. Same location." I showed her the photograph on my tablet. The first picture included the wall, the meter, and my analog watch because my father had taught me that a number without a place and time was a roomer wearing work boots. Wade leaned close enough for me to smell the cinnamon gum he used after coffee. "You already got your second opinion," he said. "Now stop selling the first one." The words were meant for me alone, but Claire's eyes moved between us. I slipped the rejected sheet beneath the clear cover on my clipboard. Wade's red line looked almost cheerful against the white paper. "We need to determine the source," I said. "We need to finish the inspection." Claire rose and wiped her meter pins with an alcohol pad. "We'll do both." That was the first small turn against Wade, and it lasted perhaps 8 seconds. Then he smiled. "Of course," he said. "I'm not afraid of a wall." He led Claire toward the compressor room, describing the co-op's preventive maintenance program in calm, precise detail. The crew followed. Lou stayed behind long enough to look at my blue tape. "28's ugly," he murmured. "So is 9 to 28 in 47 minutes. He glanced toward the door. "Defrost makes everything ugly. Does it make that wall wet every time?" Lou took off his cap, rubbed the flattened hair beneath it, and put the cap back on. "I take care of machines," he said. "Walls are you Bell people." Then he left me with the hum of the lights and the smell of cold milk fat. My mother was waiting in the corridor. "You couldn't have tested somewhere less visible?" she asked. The question was so absurd I almost laughed. "The water picked the spot, Mom." "You know what I mean." "I really don't." She crushed the rim of her paper cup with one thumb. Ruth had spent 40 years in work jackets with our company name stitched over her heart, but she could make a navy cardigan look like protective equipment. "Wade's under pressure. So is the wall. Nora." That was all she had to say. My name in that tone carried invoices, payroll Fridays, Thanksgiving dinners, and the February Wade had loaned Bell weatherproofing enough money to keep 3 trucks from being repossessed. I had been 31 then, already running field diagnostics, old enough to understand that family help usually came with an invisible ledger. I looked through the open doorway. The blue square remained beside the pinholes, bright against the cream paint. "Did he know it was wet?" I asked. Mom's fingers tightened around the cup. "The members need this sale." That wasn't my question. Claire's company gets the building. The members get their equity. The producers who want to stay can sign supply agreements. Everyone gets a way forward. Did Wade know? She walked to a trash barrel and dropped the cup through the swinging lid. It bounced off the rim and fell to the floor. She bent to pick it up, though there were 3 men nearby whose salaries she had helped authorize. "He knows every bad sound this place makes," she said. Then she put the cup in the trash and went after the inspection group. The co-op had been built in sections, each decade leaving behind a different kind of mistake. The original receiving hall had glazed block and drains wide enough to swallow a wrench. Bay 2 had insulated metal panels from the 80s that popped when the sun hit them. Bay 3 was newer, though newer meant its coolant piping had been installed when people still smoked beside the loading dock. The wall I tested separated cold storage from a narrow service chase. Above it ran a condensate line from the evaporator assembly. The pipe disappeared behind a steel soffit before joining a floor drain near the compressor room. I had noticed 3 things before I used the meter: a pale yellow crescent in the paint, rust beginning on the lower corner guard, and 6 inches of clean concrete where a pallet should have been. Someone had been keeping that space open. Those were observations. Wade's rejection turned them into questions. We finished the inspection shortly after 2. Wade became gracious as the hours passed. He found Claire a warmer coat, had coffee brought from the office, and remembered the name of the engineer at her company who had requested the transformer records. By the time we reached the loading docks, he had restored the room's confidence in him through sheer competence. That was his gift. He could make one ugly moment feel like your failure to appreciate the rest of his day. At the exit, Claire handed me her card. "Send me your instrument's calibration record," she said. Wade was beside her. "Our office will assemble the final inspection package. My report goes directly to the party who retained us. The co-op retained Bell." Claire looked at him. "My purchase team requested the moisture survey under the due diligence addendum. It's still being coordinated through my office. I checked the work authorization on my tablet. The language was muddier than I liked. The co-op had issued the purchase order, but Claire's company was named as an intended recipient. I'll send the report to both," I said. Wade smiled without showing teeth. "Once it's accurate." He walked Claire to her car. Lou came through the loading door carrying a plastic bucket full of gauges and copper fittings. One loose fitting rolled around the bottom with every step. "You left your tape," he said. "It's marking the test spot." Wade hates tape on painted walls. "I've learned so much about him today." Lou snorted. "You should put that on a brochure." He kept walking, then stopped beside our truck. "For what it's worth, the evaporator's draining," he said. "That's not the same as the condensate line being intact." His face closed. I didn't say it was. Before I could ask another question, Wade called his name from across the lot. Lou lifted the bucket as though it explained everything and headed back inside. At Bell Weatherproofing, the office radiator was stuck on full blast. Evan had one window open despite the January wind and a stack of supplier statements held down by a brick sample. He was married to my sister, but he had worked for my mother longer than I had. Family gatherings had taught him how to disagree with us while continuing to butter bread. He read the rejected sheet twice. "He wrote on your field report?" "With my pen." "You let him?" I was busy being publicly wrong. Evan dropped the sheet onto his desk. "Don't make jokes. I'm trying not to have a stroke. You don't smoke, you run 4 mornings a week, and your resting heart rate is something you mention too often. You'll survive. The co-op has $17,000 in approved work scheduled next month." 18.6. That's supposed to calm me? I took off my coat. The office smelled of hot dust, wet canvas, and the orange hand cleaner our crews used. Along one wall, metal job baskets held active files. 3 of the baskets had green co-op tags. Evan followed my eyes. "Roof curb at Bay 2. Dock seal replacement. Flashing at the receiving canopy," he said. "All cancelable." He can't cancel findings. He can cancel us. Mom entered from the shop carrying her leather ledger, even though every number in it also lived in accounting software. She closed the window, turned the radiator valve with a pair of pliers, and sat without removing her cardigan. "What are you writing?" she asked me. "The truth, with photographs. Write that the result may be influenced by salts." "Do you have evidence of salts?" "It's an old masonry wall. So is the post office. I don't diagnose it by age." Evan rubbed both hands over his face. "Can we say elevated reading requiring observation?" It rose 19 points during one defrost cycle. "Requiring further investigation, then." "That's what active moisture means. It means that to you," Mom said. "To Wade, it means Claire holds back $500,000. I don't write for Wade's feelings." "No. You write like the paper has never had to make payroll." The room went still. Mom looked down at her ledger. A pale scar crossed the back of her hand from a sheet metal edge she had caught years before. I remembered wrapping that hand at a job site while she dictated 3 calls to suppliers and refused to sit down. She could be brave about blood and terrified of debt. Evan picked up the report again. "Give me until morning. I'll review the contract language." "The language doesn't change the reading. It changes who gets to fire us over it." My email chimed. The message was from Wade. It went to Mom and Evan as well. Effective immediately, Bell Weatherproofing was suspended from all co-op property, pending review of unreliable testing practices and unprofessional conduct during a material transaction. Evan read it from his screen. His jaw shifted once. Mom closed her eyes. A second message arrived, this one only to me. Wade had attached a clean version of my inspection form. The moisture finding had been replaced with temporary surface condensation consistent with normal defrost operations. At the bottom, he had left my signature line blank. His note contained 9 words. "Correct the language, sign it, and we can move forward." I looked at the 3 green job tags across the room, then at the rejected report beneath Evan's hand. "Move forward where?" I said. Neither of them answered. I turned Wade's 9 words into a PDF, attached them to the job file, and started my report. Evan watched me from across his desk. "What are you doing?" "Preserving the original." I know what the button does. Then this is going faster than I expected. "Nora, wait until morning." It is morning somewhere. "Don't be cute." Mom put her ledger in her bag. "He sent it because he wants you to react." "He sent me a false conclusion with a blank signature line because he wants me to sign it." "I didn't say he was right." "You haven't said he's wrong." She zipped the bag so hard the pull tab struck the desk. "Wade kept this company open when the bank wouldn't give me another week." "I know. You know the story. That isn't the same as knowing what it cost him." "Then tell me." "He had to sell equipment." "What equipment?" Mom's eyes moved toward Evan. It was the first time I had seen uncertainty on his face that evening. She said, from the small farm he still owned with his first wife. He sold the milking system, paid our truck notes. By the time he could replace it, she had leased the acreage to someone else. I sat back. Wade had always described leaving the farm as a clean business decision. He said he was better at moving milk than producing it. At family dinners, he made jokes about cows preferring his first wife. Why didn't I know that? I asked. Because help turns ugly when everybody keeps weighing it. It's already being weighed. Mom looked tired rather than angry. That's my point. She left through the shop. A moment later, the outer door closed with its familiar double rattle. Evan swiveled toward his computer. Save the draft. Give me until 8. To do what? Read the due diligence addendum, check our insurance language, figure out whether Wade can claim you exceeded scope. I tested the wall I was hired to test, and 2 years ago you tested a wall you were hired to test. There it was. The washdown water was trapped behind the panel, I said. I corrected the finding before demolition. You still missed it on the first pass. I did. Claire will hear about it. Then she'll hear it from me. He studied me, probably searching for the version of his sister-in-law who understood that compromise could be a tool. I understood it perfectly. A moisture meter made compromises all day long. It converted electrical resistance, material density, temperature, and calibration assumptions into a number a human could use. The wall didn't get a vote. A signature did. I'll wait until 8, I said. Evan nodded. I'm not changing the finding. His nod stopped. I heard you. At 7:54 the next morning, he came into the conference room carrying the contract and 2 coffees. He put one beside me without asking how I took it. After 16 years, he knew. The co-op issued the purchase order, he said. Claire's company is an intended recipient. Wade can remove us from the site, but he can't stop us from delivering work already performed. Insurance? Requires us to report observed conditions accurately. Imagine that. I'm trying to help you. I know. That irritated him more than if I had argued. He dropped into the chair across from me. Can we include the salts possibility? In the limitations section, along with surface temperature, conductive material, and the need for invasive confirmation. And you'll say the source is unconfirmed. It is. He read the report while I drank the coffee. On page 4, he changed significant rise to 19-point rise. On page 6, he circled a photograph. What's that clean strip? Where the pallet row was spaced away from the wall. Could be forklift clearance. Could be. You didn't write that. I didn't speculate. He looked at the picture again. Wade hates losing pallet space. He hates blue tape, too. That's because he's deeply unwell. It slipped out so dryly that I laughed. Evan tried not to, then gave up for half a second. That half second felt like the old office. I sent the report to Wade and Claire at 8:23. The package included the calibration certificate, both time-stamped meter photographs, thermal images, the rejected field sheet, and Wade's corrected version with my empty signature line. Evan saw the last attachment only after it left. You sent his email? It's part of the record. You could have told me. You could have asked whether I was protecting us. His chair rolled backward when he stood. That is exactly what I have been asking. Wade's response arrived 11 minutes later. He canceled every open work order. The green tags came down one by one. Our foreman, Dennis, stood at the job board while Evan reassigned the week. The roof curb crew went to a warehouse caulking project we had expected to start in March. 2 installers got a day of shop maintenance. Dennis asked whether he should unload the dock seals from truck 2. Evan said, "Leave them." Wade canceled. "I can read, Dennis." Dennis looked at me, then back at Evan. "Leaving them on the truck doesn't make the job uncanceled. Unload them." The dock seals landed against the shop wall with soft black thuds. They had been custom-sized, until another facility needed 2 openings exactly that wide and exactly that tall. They were $1,200 worth of rubber furniture. Claire didn't respond until late afternoon. Her note was 3 sentences. She acknowledged the report. She confirmed that her reading would be included in the purchase file. She requested access to Bay 3 for 72 hours of monitored testing under normal operating conditions. Wade copied all of us on his answer. The co-op would cooperate after its own review established whether further testing was warranted. Then he attached a photograph of the wall reading 11%. The blue tape was gone. I enlarged the picture. A dehumidifier hose ran through the lower corner. Only 3 inches showed, but its ribbed gray surface was unmistakable. "He's drying the bay," I said. Evan leaned over my monitor. "Maybe they always run one." "They didn't yesterday." "You photographed the whole room?" "I have the west half. The unit would have been outside my frame." Mom came in carrying a paper sack from the diner. She set sandwiches on the conference table and saw the photograph over my shoulder. Wade said he was correcting the humidity. "When?" "This morning." "You spoke to him?" "He's my brother. He's an opposing party with my signature in his inbox." "He is not an opposing party." Evan opened the sack and passed me a wrapped sandwich. "I'm begging both of you to eat before this becomes a Greek tragedy with pickles." Mom didn't smile. I unwrapped mine. Tuna. She knew I hated the diner's tuna because they put sweet relish in it. Either she had forgotten or the sandwich was a message. "He wants to meet tonight," she said. "Who?" "The opposing party." We met Wade in a booth at the same diner after the dinner rush. He had already ordered coffee for all of us. Mine sat in front of the empty seat beside him, positioning me as his ally before I arrived. I slid in across from him. He moved the cup over without comment. Wade looked more like Mom when he was tired. Same narrow bridge to the nose. Same habit of pressing his lips together before saying something expensive. "The wall is at 10%, he said. "After how many hours of dehumidification?" We adjusted the environment. "That's an interesting way to spell dehumidifier." Mom sighed. "Can we talk like people?" Wade placed a clear sleeve on the table. Inside it was a 1-page statement from a building materials supplier, explaining that salts and metallic coatings could create elevated resistance readings. "You rejected my result before you had that. I knew what old block does. Then why was it 9% the first time I tested? Different spot, same pinholes. According to you. And Claire." He stirred his coffee, though he took it black. "The purchase agreement expires in 6 weeks, he said. 4 members have liens against their distributions. 2 more are carrying operating loans they expected to clear at closing. The refrigeration plant needs a compressor overhaul by summer. Claire's offer is fair, but her people are looking for places to put money in escrow. You handed them one." The wall handed them one. "You're hiding behind grammar. I'm standing behind my report." Wade leaned back. "Do you remember Hartwell Commons?" "The washdown panel." "You said roof leak. We opened the parapet, found nothing, and looked like amateurs. We didn't open anything. You recommended it." "I recommended selective investigation. I repeated the test from the service corridor, found the trapped cleaning water, and issued a correction. After I challenged you, after new evidence, you were wrong." "Yes." The word seemed to disappoint him. He had wanted resistance he could break down, not a fact I had already accepted. A server topped off his coffee. Wade thanked her by name and asked about her car repair. He remembered details because people were easier to manage when they felt remembered. After she walked away, he lowered his voice. "You were wrong then, Nora. You could be wrong now." I could. Mom touched the wrapped crackers beside her cup but didn't open them. Wade said, "Change active moisture to elevated meter response. Add the salt explanation. Recommend observation after closing. I restore the work orders." "And Claire's meter?" "2 devices responding to the same interference. Her meter uses a different scale. Nobody buying a $6 million property cares about the circuitry. They care what your conclusion costs them." Claire seemed interested in the circuitry. His mouth tightened. There it was, the thing beneath all his careful concern. He disliked Claire's competence because he couldn't charm her past a technical question. He disliked mine because family history told him he shouldn't have to. He took an envelope from inside his coat and placed it beside Mom's hand. Inside were the canceled work orders, reprinted and ready for signatures. Mom stared at them. "All I'm asking," Wade said, "is that Nora use language proportionate to what she actually knows." I took my rejected field sheet from my bag. "Then remove your red line. Accept the report with the source unconfirmed." "That doesn't solve the problem." "It solves your claim that this is about accuracy." He looked at the red line as if someone else had drawn it. Mom pushed the envelope toward me. "Could you recommend monitoring without changing the reading?" "The report already recommends monitoring and investigation. Could it be more prominent?" "It has its own heading." Wade laughed once. "You see, this isn't technical. She wants me to bend." I met his eyes. "I want you to stop calling me incompetent because I found something inconvenient." For the first time that night, his face softened. It would have been easier if it hadn't. "You think I enjoyed that?" he asked. "You had options. So did you. You could have pulled me aside." "In front of the buyer, after she watched me test it? You could have shown loyalty." "To whom?" That softness disappeared. Wade stood, left cash beneath his untouched water glass, and kissed the top of Mom's head. It was an old gesture, casual and proprietary. "The offer expires Friday," he told Evan. "What offer?" I asked. Wade buttoned his coat. "A separate scope, temporary wall treatment, repainting, and documentation. Enough to get Bell's crew through the month." "You're offering us the work?" "I'm offering Evan the work." He left the diner. Mom kept looking at the envelope of restored contracts. Evan watched the door. "You knew?" I asked him. "He mentioned the possibility this afternoon." And I said I'd review a written scope. "He wants our company to paint over the spot I flagged. He wants the wall made presentable while they investigate." He removed my tape, dried the room, and blocked Claire's monitoring. Which is why I haven't accepted. Yet. Evan pushed his coffee away. "We have 9 people, Nora." Dennis said 6. 6 livelihoods. 9 people on payroll. 3 of us apparently survive on principals and diner tuna. Mom shut her eyes. The joke landed badly and Evan knew it. He took a breath. "I'm trying to buy time. With my credibility. With whatever we still have that Wade wants. The next week gave us plenty of time and very little money. We filled 2 days with small jobs, a leaking rooftop vent at a veterinary supply warehouse, failed sealant around a restaurant freezer, and an emergency drying call in the basement of a private club where the carpet smelled like wet cigars. I spent Thursday night tracing water beneath wood paneling while a club manager followed me with a towel, wiping each place my boots had already been. At 2 a.m, Dennis brought me coffee from a gas station. "You planning to die down here?" he asked. "Not if the coffee gets me first." He squatted beside the baseboard I had removed. "Evan says co-op work might come back." "Did he?" "Said there's a patch job." I looked at him. Dennis lifted both hands. "I'm not asking, I'm just deciding whether to unload truck 2 again." "The dock seals are already unloaded." "Then why did I trip over one tonight?" That was Evan's version of hope. Quietly putting canceled materials back where they could leave in a hurry. At dawn, I returned to the office and found him asleep in the conference room, his head beside an open archive box. On the table were old co-op service tickets, photographs, and a yellowed quote with my handwriting across the top. Bay 3, condensate drainage, investigate recurring wall moisture. The quote was 8 months old. Clipped behind it was a printed email from Wade. Defer until transaction. Monitor and keep pallet row clear. Evan woke when I pulled the paper free. He looked at the email in my hand, then at me. "I was trying to find the paint specifications," he said. "Did you?" His eyes dropped to the date on Wade's instruction. "No, he said. "I found this." For a moment, neither of us touched anything. The archive box had co-op, closed written on one end in Mom's block letters. Closed did not mean resolved in our office. It meant build. The difference was why we kept boxes. I laid Wade's email beside the yellow quote. "Did we inspect the line?" I asked. Evan rubbed the mark the table had left on his cheek. There should be photos. We sorted service tickets while the radiator hissed behind us. A roof leak in Bay 2, a damaged dock bumper, condensation around a freezer door frame. The co-op called us for everything water might have touched, including things water could not reasonably be blamed for. Near the bottom, I found a thumb drive taped to a work order. Evan plugged it into his laptop. The photographs appeared in the order he had taken them 8 months earlier. The first showed the yellow crescent on the Bay 3 wall, faint but already present. The next showed the steel soffit above it with one panel removed. Green oxidation ringed the elbow where the condensate line turned toward the drain. A dark track ran along the pipe insulation. The third photograph included Lou's hand holding a wad of blue shop towel beneath the joint. The towel was wet. "Who took these?" I asked. "I did." "You went up there?" Wade asked for a rough number before he approved a full diagnostic. "You saw the elbow leaking." "I saw moisture at the elbow. Could have been condensation on the fitting." "You wrote recurring wall moisture." "Because the wall was recurringly moist." I looked at him. He sighed. That sounded better before I heard it. A spreadsheet on the drive listed 2 options. The first was exploratory removal of the soffit and insulation, followed by a dye test. The second was an allowance to replace the elbow if the test confirmed failure. Wade had declined both. Under status, Evan had typed, "Manager requests monitoring through pending property transaction." "You knew there was a transaction 8 months ago?" I asked. I knew Wade hoped there would be one. Half the county knew. "And you didn't connect this to my reading?" I forgot. How do you forget a wet line over the exact wall I tested? By having 300 other wet things to remember. He turned the laptop toward me. "Say it," I told him. "What?" "That I should have known." His voice sharpened. "You should have known." "Thank you." "And so should I. Better?" "No." "Good. I'd worry if we started enjoying this." I copied the archive to the Bay 3 file, preserving the original folder dates. Then I photographed the box, the thumb drive still taped to the work order, and Wade's printed instruction. Evan watched me. "You think I planted it?" "I think Wade will say we did." That woke him completely. He opened our job management system and pulled the digital record. The quote had been entered 8 months earlier. The email attachment carried Wade's address and the original server timestamp. Evan exported the audit history. At 9, Mom arrived and found the conference table covered in paper. She picked up Wade's email first. Her face changed by degrees. Surprise. Recognition. Then the careful stillness she used when a supplier had made an error large enough to threaten a relationship. "He told me it was staining from the old insulation," she said. "When?" I asked. "Last spring." "The line isn't old." "The insulation around it." "He told you about the wall?" "He said they were keeping a pallet row clear until the sale." I slid the photograph of the wet blue towel toward her. Mom touched one corner but did not lift it. "Did he say why?" I asked. "He said it was precautionary." "And during the inspection?" "He told me not to worry if your meter reacted." The shame on her face in Bay 3 made sense then. It had arrived before Wade rejected me because he had prepared her for the rejection. "He knew I'd find it," I said. "He believed you'd misread it." "He moved the pallets." "Nora, I'm telling you what he said. You're telling me what you chose to believe." Evan stood. "We're not doing that." Mom looked at him. "Doing what?" "Making her pay for Wade lying to you." The sentence startled all 3 of us. Evan took Wade's patchwork scope from his briefcase. He tore it once through the middle, realized the gesture had no practical value, and put both pieces in the recycling bin. "I'll decline it in writing." he said. Mom lowered herself into a chair. Then what happens to Dennis and the crew? I don't know. Excellent management. I learned from family. She flinched. Evan's anger vanished as quickly as it came. He pulled out the chair beside her and sat. I'm sorry. I'm tired of everyone being sorry after they've spent the money. That morning, we decided not to send the archive documents to Claire until she requested supplemental material or the co-op repeated its claim that there had been no prior condition. It was Evan's idea, and I agreed. Wade had already made me look eager to expand the problem. Throwing every old photograph at the buyer before she asked could help him. We sent Wade a short response instead. Bell Weatherproofing declined the patching scope because it conflicted with an unresolved condition identified under our existing inspection. We reserved our rights under the canceled work orders. We did not mention the archive. Wade mentioned it for us. At 3:17, he circulated a memo to the co-op members. He described me as a contractor with a direct financial interest in finding extensive repairs. He cited Hartwell Commons as evidence of a prior erroneous moisture diagnosis. He wrote that Bell Weatherproofing had proposed costly work on Bay 3 months before the inspection and was now using Claire's due diligence to revive a rejected sales opportunity. He had received Evan's decline at 2:51. 26 minutes was all he needed to turn our restraint into a hidden motive. Mom printed the memo and read it standing beside the copier. He makes it sound like we set this up, she said. That's why he asked Evan for the patch, I said. If we accepted, he could call us obedient. If we refused, he could call us greedy. Evan stared at the recycling bin, where the torn scope lay in 2 clean halves. He knew we had the old quote. He issued it. I mean, he knew exactly how it would look. My inbox filled with messages from co-op members. Most were not hostile. They were worse. Careful questions from people who wanted me to explain why my professional judgment should be trusted when my family company might profit from the result. I answered each one with the same facts: meter readings, times, calibration dates, scope language, no adjectives. One producer named Dale Markham wrote back, "Can you promise Bell won't bid the repair?" I stared at the question. If I said yes, I would be giving away work before a scope existed. If I said no, Wade's conflict argument got a fresh coat of paint. I wrote, I can promise that my finding will remain the same regardless of who performs any recommended work. Dale did not reply. Claire did. Her message arrived just before 5. Wade had copied the memo to her purchase team. She asked for the complete Hartwell file and any prior Bell records involving Bay 3. Evan leaned against my doorway while I read. There goes restraint, he said. We sent both. The Hartwell file helped more than Wade expected. It showed my original conclusion, the contradictory service corridor readings, my same-day correction, and a credit Bell had issued for the additional testing. It also showed that Wade had approved the corrected report without objection. The Bay 3 archive was less comfortable. Our company had identified the recurring condition and offered to investigate. We had also let the work order close when Wade declined. Claire called a meeting for the following afternoon at her temporary project office in a rented suite above a feed distributor. Wade attended by video. Mom, Evan, and I sat at a laminate table beneath a vent that clicked every 20 seconds. Claire began with Hartwell. You made an incorrect initial assessment, she said to me. Yes. How much did the property owner spend because of it? Nothing on repairs. Bell credited the follow-up testing. And the Bay 3 condition 8 months ago? I wasn't assigned to that visit. Evan said I was. Claire turned to him. Why did you close the work order? The manager declined investigation. We documented the condition and his instruction. Did you warn him that delay could damage the wall assembly? No, we didn't know enough to say that. Wade's face filled a monitor at the end of the table. Exactly, he said. They had a little staining. They offered a fishing expedition, and I chose not to spend member money without evidence. You kept the pallet row clear, Claire said. Routine caution. You told members there was no prior condition. I said there was no known active leak. Claire looked at the photograph of Lou's wet towel. What did you think wetting the towel? Condensation. Did you test it? That was what Bell wanted to charge us to do. He was good. Even after the email, the clean strip, and the wet towel, his decision could still sound like disciplined cost control. I could see why Mom had believed him. Part of me believed him, or at least believed the version of him who had made that choice in the spring. Then he had watched my meter climb and attacked me instead of revisiting it. Claire folded her hands. I'm separating 3 issues, she said. The physical condition, Bell's potential financial interest, Mr. Kessler's handling of disclosure. Wade said there was no non-disclosure. I didn't invite answers yet. He went quiet. Claire looked at me. Your firm will not be eligible to perform the exploratory opening. The words landed harder than I expected. I said, understood. You may observe. Wade leaned toward his camera. She should not be on site. She conducted the test being challenged. She disrupted the inspection and has become openly adversarial. Claire's expression did not change. Your memo made her credibility part of the transaction. She gets to observe the test of her finding. I felt no triumph. Bell had just lost any chance at the investigative work and perhaps the repair. Dennis would not care that I had secured a chair beside someone else's invoice. Claire continued. My facilities engineer will install a data logger in Bay 3. Normal defrost settings, normal pallet configuration, no temporary dehumidification. Both parties receive the raw readings. Wade said, production cannot be arranged around an experiment. You told me the condition was normal defrost condensation. I'm asking to observe normal defrost. The sale deadline is why I'm not opening the wall yet. That was her concession to him. 3 days of monitoring first. If the wall remained dry, she would proceed without invasive work. If moisture returned in a repeatable pattern, a jointly selected contractor would open a limited section. Wade agreed because the alternative was explaining why a normal cycle could not be observed. Outside, Evan lit a cigarette he had supposedly quit 5 years earlier. You told me you don't smoke, I said. I don't. I hold these and make poor decisions. He took one drag, coughed, and handed it to me as if I had requested it. I crushed it beneath my boot. You just wasted $1. You were about to waste the rest of your lungs. He watched traffic move past the feed distributor. I declined the patch. I saw. I also moved the dock seals back into truck 2, Dennis told me. Dennis is an enemy of mystery. I tucked my hands into my coat pockets. We're out of the repair. We should be. That's easy to say in a rented parking lot. No, Evan said. It's expensive to say anywhere. He looked at me then. I should have backed you in the office. You were scared. I'm still scared. So am I. He nodded once, relieved by something in the answer. The monitoring began Monday. Claire's engineer mounted the logger beside the old pinholes. Wade had repainted the entire lower section of wall. The yellow crescent was gone, along with every trace of my blue tape, but the 2 tiny holes remained beneath the new paint. I found them by matching a corner guard screw and a shallow chip in the block to my photographs. Lou stood near the evaporator controls with his clipboard. Claire asked for the previous month's defrost records. Wade supplied a typed summary. Lou looked down. What? Claire asked him. Nothing. You maintain the original log? He shifted his weight. There's a daily sheet. Where? Compressor room. Wade said, the summary contains the same information. Claire waited. Lou removed a ring of keys from his belt. I'll get the sheet. He returned with a grease-stained binder. Behind the machine log was a sanitation checklist initialed each night. One line appeared again and again in different handwriting. Squeegee water behind row 3 after defrost. Wade read over Claire's shoulder. That's why we adjusted the schedule, he said. Claire looked at him. You adjusted it because water was appearing? We adjusted it to reduce condensation. Then we'll restore the original settings. The pallets went back to their marked positions. The temporary dehumidifier was rolled away. Claire's engineer checked both meters against a reference block and placed them on a cart. Wade stood across the bay from me, his hands in his coat pockets. At 10:42, the compressor changed pitch. The evaporator fans stopped. A valve clicked above the ceiling, followed by the thin rush of water entering the drain pan. Claire's engineer, Martin Cho, started a timer on his tablet. Wade checked his watch. "You'll see a little humidity rise. That's the purpose of defrost." Martin set a handheld hygrometer on the cart. "Ambient is 39%. Lou stood beside the control cabinet with his grease-stained binder pressed against his chest. He had gone pale since giving Claire the original logs. I wondered whether Wade had ever made him choose between a fact and a paycheck before. The first 10 minutes gave us nothing. The wall remained cold and dry. Martin's logger drew flat lines across his screen. At 15 minutes, Wade began explaining the drain pan heaters. At 20, he described the building's air exchange rate. At 27, Claire asked him to stop talking so Martin could hear the piping. Wade closed his mouth. A faint ticking came from inside the soffit, not the steady contraction of cooling metal. This was irregular. Tick. Silence. 2 quick ticks, a soft scrape that sounded like fingernails behind a door. Lou looked at the ceiling. "You recognize that?" I asked. Water dropping on the panel. Wade said, "Or the pipe cooling." Lou's eyes remained on the soffit. "Pipes warming during defrost." At 34 minutes, the logger showed the surface temperature falling along the lower wall. Ambient humidity had risen only 2 points. Martin pressed a non-invasive sensor against the paint. 12% equivalent. Wade gave me a quick, hard look as though 12 belonged to him. At 39 minutes, a darker patch appeared around one of the old pinholes. It was smaller than a dime. Claire crouched. The position was the same as the first inspection. One knee bent, coat drawn tight, calibrated meter held level. The paint was new, but the corner guard screw and the chip in the block put her probes exactly where mine had been. Her display moved through the teens. 21, 25, 28.1. Claire did not announce it. She held the meter so Martin could photograph the screen, then handed it to Wade. He looked at the number without taking the instrument. Surface condensation. Martin checked the hygrometer. The room isn't near dew point. Localized cold bridge. Then the surface temperature would lead the moisture rise, I said. It didn't. Wade turned on me. "You've already given your opinion." And the wall repeated it. The words came out before I could make them gentler. Mom stood near the pallet row. She had come as a co-op member, not as my boss, and had spent the entire cycle saying nothing. At my answer, she looked down, but this time she was hiding a smile. Martin probed 3 feet higher. The reading there had climbed from 8 to 18. He moved toward the soffit, testing in a vertical path. Each number rose as he approached the point beneath the oxidized elbow. Claire opened the old photograph on her tablet and held it beside the wall. "The pattern matches," she said. Wade took off his glasses and cleaned them with the end of his tie. "The buyer has its data. We can restore normal production now." "This is normal production," Claire said. "You know what I mean." "I do." The data logger stayed in place for the full 72 hours. The wall dried slowly between defrosts and rows during each one. The second cycle peaked at 27.7. The third reached 29. The night sanitation sheet recorded water behind row 3 twice, even after everyone knew the line was being watched. Wade stopped calling it salt interference. He began calling it manageable condensation. Claire's purchase team selected a commercial refrigeration contractor that had never worked for the co-op or for Bell. Evan grumbled when he saw their rate, then admitted he would have charged nearly the same once travel and cold storage containment were included. The contractor removed a section of soffit first. Water had soaked the pipe insulation around the elbow. When he peeled it back, green-stained water ran over his glove. Lou swore softly. The copper elbow had a hairline split along its underside. During ordinary cooling, it held little water. During defrost, the drain pan released enough warm runoff to fill the low section of pipe. Water escaped at the split, traveled inside the insulation, and dropped behind the wall assembly. The contractor cut a narrow opening in the painted block facing at the lower wet area. The insulation behind it came out dark and heavy. Several fasteners had rusted nearly to half their original thickness. The lower track was corroded but intact. Martin bagged samples, labeled them, and photographed each layer before it left the opening. No one asked me to interpret the evidence. There was nothing left to interpret. Wade stood at the edge of the containment area in a disposable white suit that pulled tight across his shoulders. "How far does it run?" he asked. The contractor pointed with a gloved finger. "At least 12 feet, maybe 18. We won't know until we chase dry material." "Can you patch what you opened and replace the elbow?" "We can replace the elbow today." "And the wall?" "We need a repair design." "It's a block wall. It's part of a refrigerated assembly. You've got wet insulation, corroded attachment, and a breached vapor plane." Wade looked at me. I kept my hands in my coat pockets. He waited until Claire and Martin walked toward the compressor room. Then he stepped closer. "You got what you wanted." The plastic suit crackled when he moved. "I wanted you to accept the first reading." "No, you wanted the wall opened. You had a wet towel under a green elbow 8 months ago. The wall was already telling you. And your company closed the ticket. At your instruction. You could have refused. We should have." He had not expected that. I looked through the opening. The wet insulation sagged from the cavity in gray clumps. "We helped you postpone it," I said. "Evan signed off. Mom believed you. I didn't know enough to ask. Belle owns that part." Wade lowered his voice. "Then say that to Claire." "I already did." "Say it to the members." "I sent them the records. Tell them this did not require a purchase holdback." "I can't tell them that." "You can tell them the line is fixed." "The line is fixed. The wall isn't." His jaw moved beneath the hood of the suit. "Do you understand what happens if Claire freezes $300,000? Dale loses most of his distribution to the bank. The Morrow partnership has a tax payment due. Your mother was counting on her share to reduce Belle's line of credit." "I understand." "You don't act like it." "I'm taking basement drying calls at 2 a.m. because you canceled our work." I offered it back. "For my signature." "I offered a solution. You offered me a price." He looked toward the open bay. Claire was speaking with Lou, who kept turning the binder in his hands. Wade said, "I spent 18 years protecting these people from costs they couldn't carry. Every roof leak became a capital project. Every vibration became a new compressor. If I had opened every wall somebody wanted opened, there would be nothing left to sell." "That's probably true." His anger faltered. I continued, "You made a defensible decision 8 months ago. Then the reading changed. You could have said, 'We need to revisit this.' In front of the buyer? Yes. You think transactions survive that kind of uncertainty? This one survived the truth. It nearly didn't survive you managing it." Wade stared through the clear face shield at me. For 1 second, he looked less like the man who had humiliated me and more like the uncle who had arrived at our shop during the worst February of Mom's life with a cashier's check and a truck full of groceries she had not asked for. Then he said, "Your mother will pay for your righteousness." He walked away before I could answer. Claire's repair holdback was $325,000. It covered removal of the remaining wet insulation, replacement of corroded fasteners and lower track, restoration of the vapor barrier, new wall facing, testing, and contingency for concealed damage. Unused funds would return to the co-op after independent verification. The sale stayed on schedule. That fact made Wade's next move harder. He could no longer argue that I had destroyed the transaction. So he argued that the holdback was larger than necessary because I had poisoned Claire's confidence. The co-op's executive committee met in the employee break room 2 evenings later. The room held 6 people comfortably. 12 attended, which meant half of us stood beside vending machines that hummed louder whenever conversation stopped. I attended for Belle. Mom attended as a member. Wade sat at the end of a folding table with the sale binder in front of him. He presented the revised closing numbers without drama. He showed how the holdback would reduce initial distributions, explained the schedule for releasing unused funds, and answered detailed questions about the compressor reserve. He was prepared, patient, and more useful than anyone else in the room. Then Dale Markham asked why the wet wall condition had not appeared in the seller's disclosure package. Wade said the source had been unknown. Dale held up a copy of the spring email. You knew there was recurring moisture. I knew there was staining. You told us Belle invented it to win work. I said Belle had a financial conflict. Evan stood beside the soda machine. We declined the exploratory job. After you were challenged, we declined your patch before the buyer ordered exploration. Wade's voice sharpened. And then Belle bid the repair? We haven't bid anything. Claire's contractor had produced a scope that allowed qualified building envelope firms to compete for restoration after the refrigeration work. Belle was eligible because we had been excluded from designing and pricing the exploratory opening. Dale looked at me. Will you bid? If the co-op invites us. And if you don't get it? The wall stays wet or dry independent of my feelings. Someone at the back gave a short laugh. It released some pressure, but not much. The committee went into a closed discussion. Evan and I waited in the loading corridor beside a vending machine that had eaten his dollar. Even the crackers are holding funds in escrow, he said. Mom came out 20 minutes later. She looked at me, then at Evan. They're extending Wade through closing and 90 days of transition. What about his contract? Evan asked. Ends after that. And the bonus? Removed. The agreement says it depends on complete and timely disclosure of material conditions. I looked through the break room window. Wade was gathering his papers into the sale binder. No one helped him. Mom rubbed the scar on the back of her hand. He asked how I voted. What did you tell him? The truth. That's a dangerous family habit. She almost smiled. Then she said, I voted for the transition. This place needs him through closing. He'll think that means you chose him. I also voted to end his authority over vendor selection immediately. Through the glass, Wade looked up. His eyes found Mom first and me second. She held his gaze. He helped me when I needed him, she said. I can be grateful for that without letting him spend you. Her voice broke on the last word. She turned away as if embarrassed by it. I took her hand. She resisted for a second, then let me. The co-op issued the repair invitation the next morning. 3 firms bid. Evan cut our usual margin by 1 point and then put it back after I threatened to lock him out of estimating. We included every layer, every inspection hold point, and a line stating that diagnostic findings could not be changed by project management without the responsible technician's written approval. Bell won by $11,000. Wade did not congratulate us. He also did not interfere. The work took 5 weeks. Dennis removed the custom dock seals from Truck 2 and complained that they had become emotionally dependent on him. Lou replaced the cracked elbow and regraded the condensate line so water could not sit at the turn. Our crew chased the wet insulation 17 feet, replaced the damaged fasteners, rebuilt the vapor plane, and closed the wall under Martin's inspection. Evan gave me final authority over diagnostic reports in writing. He signed the policy before sliding it across my desk. I would like credit for personal growth, he said. You spelled my middle name wrong. He snatched the page back. Mom and Wade spoke only about closing tasks. He completed the transition, delivered the operating files, and left the co-op with the sale finished and the members' reduced distributions scheduled. His competence remained in the building after his authority did. On the final test, Bay 3 entered a full defrost cycle at 10:42. Lou watched the drain line. Martin watched the logger. Claire pressed her calibrated meter into the repaired wall. 9.1. 40 minutes later, it still read 9.1. Mom tore a square from my roll of blue painter's tape. She wrote Final, 9.1 in black marker, and placed it beside the tested spot. This time the number stayed.